Yo, Julian on the brown note at the end of 4 review Monday. In Darkness now. A review of How to Dress Well's album, I Am Toward You. How to Dress Well is a project by Tom Krell, who is a very independent multimedia artist from Boulder, Colorado. And back in 2010, I raved and featured his album Love Remains, which was this incredibly broken DIY version of what R&B could be. And Ready for the World, which remains one of my favourite songs of all time, a very sort of weird, almost My Bloody Valentine take on R&B, was my track of the year. So I do have a history with this, and Total Loss, a follow-up, got him a fair amount of acclaim and continued in that mould. After that, I switched off. And the reason is that What Is the Heart in 2014, it really repositioned him as a standard middle-of-the-road R&B artist for me, and I kind of lost interest, and it was all a bit saccharine, and I haven't been back, and I have gone back now. He's done like Care in 2016, the Anteroom in 2018, and I miss those albums, but I Am Towards You, I feel, is a real return to form that's being criminally underappreciated by critics, and one of my albums of the year. It's a fascinating album. I can best describe as, if you remember the artist Sophie, who died tragically in an accident and sort of became synonymous with a whole era of artists. She was a trans artist from Wales who died in Greece, and only sort of became famed initially for her sound stages for these very sort of abrasive and sugar-fueled rushes of songs. But her album Pearl, I can't remember the full title because it's a terrible title, but Pearl, everyone knows what this album is, was a masterpiece. This feels like The Weeknd, the modern version of The Weeknd, himself a pretty alt R&B artist, and the last 2 albums he's made have been fantastic, remaking the Sophie album. The voice of The Weeknd and the voice of Tom Krell when he's doing falsetto is eerily close, but the overall soundscapes and production is a little bit more like Sophie, but not from her dance-oriented tracks, but from that album Pearl. I immediately thought that with the opener, New Confusion, opening with I've Got to Say Goodbye to Love. There's some pretty dark lyrics on this album, very wordy, introspective, existential lyrics, worth reading. After going through so many lyrics on that Flaming Lips review, I'm not going to drag out a load more, but worth reading the lyrics. Very intelligent, intellectual. He's a PhD. So it's this very interesting conceptual album. It's sculpted like that as well. It's a beautifully pretty opener. He uses his voice in many different ways on this album. His king hit is using that Weeknd style falsetto, but he uses it in a lot of different ways. I think he's manipulating his voice in the back third of the opener, New Confusion, to sound like a sax solo, which it really does. It's great on, and this is an example of the wordiness, Contingency, Necessity, Modality of Fate, the second track. The musical abstraction of those early couple of albums and the distortion coming back. The guitar is used brilliantly throughout this album. This time the electric guitar, the sort of like downward motif represents the harp motif from the first song. Is like he's specifically sculpted every step on this album almost into a new kind of R&B music. The difference, like there are 2 auteurs. I just reviewed the Amon Dunes album and he again is another auteur making his own music, but what this album has in spades over that Amon Dunes album is the melodies and the songs are so much stronger, particularly over the opening first half. The third track, Cribs of Stain, is one of my tracks of the year already. It's very vivid, bright, brassy. It's got huge guitars on it. and it's got great, beautiful verses, and then this huge, like, 2005 emo guitar chorus going on. And it reminded me as well, when it got past that, the chorus, into another huge guitar line of Fuck Buttons, this instrumental group who I loved. I don't know what they're doing at the moment. And No Light is this really beautiful, breezy summer jam, which could have been, a major pop summer jam, but it's got like feedback overlaid into it as well. The Nothing Prayer's got this very sort of pure Weeknd. I kept coming back to The Weeknd on this album, and I've loved the last two albums by The Weeknd. One of the greats out there, I think, at the moment. It's had his Lana Del Rey era of great albums. Very pure falsetto, and then it goes into this long-form free jazz instrumentation, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Love Remains era as well. And again, the album's beautifully recorded, and the guitars constantly change what style and tone of guitar is being used. Really good. On and around it, sophisticated, very low-key sort of pop. Reminded me again, another artist that connects with How to Dress Well for me is Twin Shadow. I don't know what Twin Shadow's up to lately. And the back half of the song has this decay to it, like William Basinski's Disintegration tapes laced over the top. The song in the middle, which isn't in the middle, but it sort of represents the fact that the midsection of the album is more of a breathing pattern. Has field recordings and ambient noises, and then it sort of goes into these like pulsing kicks and a gospel hook with not much in the way of lyrics, but it's more like a sound collage. And it does represent the fact that the midsection is kind of more of a holding pattern on the album. And after that we get back into more full-blown songs, and I thought the Gas Station Against Black and Hillside as well had some really interesting glitchy IDM beats. Starts off with like this drum and bass vibe to it, and then goes into these almost Radiohead Kid A Idiotech era sort of glitchy beats, and big sub bass going on, which is really interesting as well. Track 9, A Faint Glow Through a Window of Thin Bone, That's How My Fate Is Shown. It's the stillest ballad, I guess. It's a chamber pop ballad almost, and then the back end of it has these Penderecki sort of scratchy violin noises over the top of it. Almost reminded me in the first half of Bon Iver, not from like the first couple of Bon Iver albums, but the more abstract 22 a Million sort of Bon Iver era. And then we get in through The Only Joy on Earth is just a song fragment, and a fairly standard R&B, avant-garde R&B closer for the album. Ending on the sample There's No Wind in the Sky, which is kind of mysterious. The only flaw I find in this album is the first half is so strong. Each individual song is so strong, and the second half probably a little bit more tepid. I think, I wouldn't have minded him going harder into the art house realms in the second half if he wasn't going to base them on the massively strong songs of the opening 4 or 5 tracks. But that's about it. It's criminally underappreciated. It's a fantastic album, and it's definitely someone that's made an album with a lyrical, thematic core at its heart, and who has used sonic elements repeated and fading in and out of various songs on the album. It's just a little bit indistinct in the second half, but still it's a fantastic album, which I always give the wrong title to. So I Am Towards You by How to Dress Well, for me, real return to form, an 8.5 out of 10.